Your perspective, because you've done the scholarly work.
Sure. No, I didn't have many experiences.
Right. So I don't mind anything you want to throw in that way, but I'm not casting you in any unfamiliar role here. You wrote the
I'm
book.
not going to tell you about it.
But yeah, I mean, you did the study on this. So anyway, maybe we should just tell them heads up. Well, this is cheap.
Okay, tape is cheap.
We're not.
No.
We're very expensive.
Oh, well,
All
that's
right.
good. Well, I'm not paying for it.
We're rolling. We have speed. We're good to go. Everybody's happy.
Excellent. Well,
Except me.
I'm going to start, but here's the easiest question you'll get all day, softball.
What?
I want you to say and spell your complete name.
Say and spell it. Thomas R. Brooks, Thomas, R. period, Brooks.
And the division, the unit that you served in World War II?
G Company, the 85th Regiment of the 10th Mountain Division.
And highest rank served in World War II?
PFC.
All the way.
I became a PFC after 90 days of basic training, and I stayed a PFC to the very end of the war.
You're consistent. I love that.
That's exactly right.
I want to start talking about Yugoslavia a little bit.
Sure.
Can you sort of set the stage for me as the war was winding down? Where was the 10th? Why were they there? And what happened?
Well, the 10th had penetrated into the Alps, up along the Adige River, which is to the west of Verona. And we were quite a ways up in the Alps. And some of our troops actually came very close to the Bremer Pass, and some of the other passes up. Marano, town called Marano. And that's where we were when the war ended. And the Yugoslavs didn't make any move. I mean, they'd sort of won their part of the war. And on the 1st of May, or the very first part of May, Tito sent his soldiers to Trieste, because he wanted to take Trieste. He wanted to take a portion of that province north of Trieste and make it part of Yugoslavia. And the Allies, us, the United States and Great Britain, weren't going to have any part of that. And Truman said, listen to the Brits, let's do something. And so the British sent the New Zealanders regiment of them across from the Po Valley to Trieste, 40-mile trip. And it was a fantastic run. And they got to Trieste just about the same day the Yugos were coming in the other gate. But what it did is prevent Yugoslavians from taking over Trieste. They stopped that sort of cold. But at the same time, the Yugos had taken chunks of the province north of that and were preparing to move in and occupy it and add it to Yugoslavia, because they wanted to establish a claim for that. And there was some of this business rather nasty. For example, the Italian Communist partisan rounded up something like 20,000 people, turned them over to the Yugos and said they were all fascist. But what they really were their opposition in Italy. And the Yugos took them to Yugoslavia, and something like only 10,000 came back. They were murdered, in essence. So that kind of thing was going on. And President Truman wanted the Yugos stopped. He didn't want them to take over that. So the British, as I said, sent the New Zealanders. They moved one of their divisions. I don't remember the division in. And then the 10th the war had ended. We had been withdrawn out of the territory that we'd occupied. We were guarding some German prisoners at Brescia, near Brescia, the airfield there. And then we were ordered to go around the 1st of May or a day or two later, towards Yugoslavia, the province north of Trieste. And the purpose was to see the Yugoslavs behave themselves. And ultimately, I'm not sure of the time, but what the Yugos made their move, and then they were forced to agree that they would withdraw to a line that was drawn roughly along the Isonzo River, and then they would be responsible for patrolling between that line and their original borders, and we, the Allies, were responsible for patrolling and guarding the area to the west. And the 10th was brought into the upper half. I mean, the British had troops around Trieste itself, and we were brought in along, I think it's called Highway 57, that runs sort of, well, I shouldn't wave my hands, but it runs east and west, then turns and runs north along the Isonzo. And so we, in essence, had our troops stationed above and below that line and sort of patrolled it. We told the Yugoslavs to behave, so to speak.
Now, would you ever feel like
Yeah, I
It's a
didn't hear it.
do-over.
I got these good headphones on too.
you blocked it out, huh?
Well, yeah, I didn't hear
Yeah.
it.
If you don't hear it through the mic,
If I don't hear it, it didn't happen.
No, it was perfect.
Let's just run it for about 5 seconds, because we'll have a break in control.
All right,
with
sure.
with the changing
I tell you what,
batteries.
let's pause let it go for a minute, and we'll have room tone. Awesome.
I'm supposed to be silent. Okay.
Play?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty, we are rolling again. Lights, camera, and action.
Oh boy.
Wow, it seems so professional. Tom, would you say that the 10th was at the birth of the Cold War?
Well, I guess you could say that.
How would you say it?
All I would say is they were punching the Yugos. Well, not punching them, but you know.
If you were going to summarize this for somebody with a little bit greater context, what would you say?
You know, in a sense, what happened there in that area, and didn't only include us, but include the Brits and so on, was in a way part of the beginning of the Cold War. I mean, and part of the way it went is because Stalin, you know, was trying to set up what later became called the Churchill called it what was the line?
Iron Curtain.
The Iron Curtain, yeah. Well, and Stalin wanted the Iron Curtain to run pretty straight down, and the Yugos were really sort of punching a bag in it, you know, that way. And Stalin, I don't know why he felt this way, but he felt somehow that if the Yugos had succeeded or did that, or if he backed them, it would cause a problem for him on the major part of that line. And so he, in effect, said to Tito, listen, I'm not going to back you up. And so Tito agreed to this arrangement where his people would patrol this side of what they called a Morgan line, because that was drawn like a zip around Trieste and then sort of straight north up to Austria. And that's why he agreed to that proposition. But still, there was tension and movement all the time. And some of his people who had gotten over into our area had to get up and move. And we had to see they sort of had to move. And so there were moments there that were kind of very nervous making for the 10th and I suppose for the British too in that area.
Would you say it was a very fluid time?
I guess I guess things were fluid. I mean, I don't know what's really meant by it. I mean, the thing, what was interesting, you know, is because they were all around. I mean, the Yugos it wasn't really a kind of firm line. And the Yugos had moved some of their people and partisans in occupied towns here and there, or areas here and there. And I know that where we were, if we took a pass and went down in Udine, there were Yugos walking the streets of the city, you see, and so on. But this is sort of before or even after they had agreed that they were moving back. And so it was their moving back sometimes that caused or failure to move back would cause some problems that they had. And there's one incident that what happened to somebody fired a shot in through a window of one of the tents, place where they were stationed, and so the captain that got very upset. He sent out a patrol. They went zipping north about 10 miles or whatever, not 10 miles, but they went zipping north. They found some kid who was doing what kids were doing. A kid had a rifle, he fired it and blew out the window of that command station. You know. So they took the rifle away, I guess, spanked the kid and sent him on his way.
Did it make you nervous that kids had rifles?
It made them nervous. It didn't make me nervous. I wasn't there.
Did you find it? Can you talk a little bit about how it was various partisans in their loose associations of?
Well, within the area, there were basically two sets of Italian partisans. There were the pro-communist and controlled by the Communist Party of Italy, and then there were the anti-communists, who were essentially Christian social democrats in their leadership. And they didn't like each other very much. There was a considerable amount of tension, but I don't recall any particular fighting or in our area at that time. But it was pretty tense.
How many different groups of people, factions, were competing for that same territory? Now, as a historian.
Well, essentially, those two Italian partisans were contending for parts of it. And then they throw in the Yugos who were trying to. They would try to. I think they even moved some of the people into that area and settled there. And so they had to got to move back across that Morgan line, and so there was some conflict over that. There's one story. There was a unit of Yugos who would occupy an official building in this very small town, and so the American, our guy, 10th guy, was a little irritated. So what he did is he got a hold of some tanks, and he had the tanks come rattling down the road, and they swirled around, and they virtually poked the nose of the tank gun into the doorway of this building. And then the tank would back up and go up, and another one would come down. And he had half a dozen of them come rolling down, turning, swirling around, pointing their guns into the doorway. And wouldn't you know, the Yugos decided they better talk to us. So they had a conversation, and then the Yugos agreed, yes, we will move tomorrow and go away, So there was some incidents like that. Another one was along the river, the Isonzo. The Yugos were on the east side, yes, and we were on the west side, and the bank of a river is up, and so all of a sudden, the Yugos are shooting our way, and then so the next morning, our commander got the local commander, 10th guy, got a little apology. We're just shooting at the riverbank, but it did make people kind of nervous.
Well, how do you know when they're aiming at you then?
Yeah, that's right. Well, they were. I think they were really aiming at the riverbank, but they intended to scare the hell out of us.
How do you know when they're aiming at you and when they're doing target practice?
Well, you don't know. If you get hit, they're aiming. Assuming their aim's any good. But there weren't any firefights. We didn't have any real firefights, as I recall. And I don't think anybody in the 10th was wounded or shot by the Yugoslavs. And I don't think we shot any of them either. We were under instructions not to fire first.
And why would that be?
So we wouldn't start trouble, I guess.
So you wouldn't start World War III?
Start World War III, whatever, yeah.
Now,
That was an order. General Hayes issued that order when we moved. It was very specific. We were not to fire first. If we were fired upon, defend yourself, but we were not to fire first. Hayes was kind of a rough and tumble guy, because they had a meeting of commanders when our division moved in there, and each division commander and so on, was asked what his plans were, and they said, well, we're going to do this, set up defense lines. And Hayes said, by tomorrow morning, my people will be 25 miles down the road towards Belgrade. So on the way out, some guy asked Hayes, why'd you say that? He said, the room's full of spies. I thought I'd scare him.
It doesn't work if you're standing, because he keeps looking over at you.
Yeah, so you got to catch us.
You say you got to catch us or something. But Hayes is that kind of guy. He's very feisty in general, and so that was sort of in line with Hayes' character.
Now that we're a little bit into the interview, I'm going to have you back up the truck and restate for generations like me and younger, why was the 10th there? What were they doing there? And
You mean in Italy itself?
as the war wound down,
Yeah.
I'm going to have you just sort of restate in a smaller, little cogent bite why the 10th was even sent to Yugoslavia.
Oh, why it was sent to Yugoslavia? Oh, I think that's relatively simple. I think that the 10th was.
Returns.
Oh, I'm sorry. The 10th was one available, And two, we had crossed the Po Valley and we'd gotten a lot of replacements, so we were sort of a full division. A number of the other divisions, I think, had begun to lose people going home because they were ready to get discharged. They'd been in Italy longer, and so they weren't as ready to do that kind of job.
Why was the 10th sent to Yugoslavia?
Because it was ready to, it was available.
Why was there a need for the 10th in Yugoslavia?
Oh, because they wanted American troops there. Harry Truman said, send a bunch of American troops.
But why?
To keep the...
I need you to tell the story in one little bite without interrupting yourself. Like you were telling it to your grandson, great-grandson.
Oh, well, we were sent there to see that the Yugos behaved themselves and did what they agreed to do, which was withdraw back to the Morgan line, essentially.
And why was that needed?
Because it was part of the deal to keep Yugoslavia from taking over that province, which the Yugoslavs wanted to do, or Tito in particular.
Do me a favor. I'm going to feed you a sentence, and then you end it. You
Sure.
just pick it up and restate what I'm going to say.
If I can.
The 10th was sent to Yugoslavia to. You repeat that and then finish it.
Okay, the 10th was sent to Yugoslavia.
Look at me. Look at me.
I'll start all over again. The 10th was sent to Yugoslavia, essentially to police the area. In the military terms, policing the area means sort of keeping the peace, making sure that the various parties that were engaged in competition and potentially fighting each other behave themselves. And then carried out the agreement, part of the Yugoslavs carried out the agreement to withdraw behind the Morgan line.
Now tell me, why did Tito want that area? And start the sentence with Tito wanted it.
Well, Tito wanted the area essentially because there'd been a historic claim on the area laid by Yugoslavia before his time, or by the Slavs, because Yugoslavia is a new nation. It was created right after World War I, wasn't it? If memory serves me right. So it was part of the historic, on their point of view, we own that territory, the Yugoslavia point of view. And the Italians, of course, said, no, you don't.
Would you say that the 10th was, because of the mountain training that they had factored into why they were sent there, besides the fact that they were available in full?
I'd like to believe that was the case. And in truth, some of our guys were up in the very mountainous regions towards Grossglockner, a corner that where Austria, Yugoslavia, and Italy meet. There's some very rugged and tough mountains. And the guys did some rock climbing there and did some skiing and did some military things that were all associated with that. So there's something to that. But on the other hand, when the 10th was withdrawn, another division came in and did continue to do the job.
But wouldn't you say the 10th, you're the mountain guys?
That's true. We were the mountain guys.
I mean, that was fortuitous, really. I mean, personally, weren't you happy to be back in the mountains?
I never got in the mountains. I was down in the flats.
Oh, unfortunately. Whoops.
I mean, Udine, the city of Udine itself is kind of flat.
You're down in an ancient riverbed, probably.
Yes. During World War I, the Austrians charged down the valley that sort of led to Udine.
But it's not lost on me that mountains are your territory.
That's true.
So in some sense...
Beyond substance, probably one of the reasons we went there at the beginning of all this, and the Yugos had moved in some of that mountainous territory up there, and so our being mountain troops was probably a very useful thing to do that. And then later, when we withdrew, that was settled. That is, in other words, it probably wasn't needed. Mountain troops were probably not needed at that time.
Do you think the 10th was happy to be back in the mountains?
Sure. They went skiing. The first thing they did, they all went skiing.
War's over. What else is there to do?
That's right. They went skiing. We had ski races up on Grossglockner. And they also did a lot of rock climbing up with the guys that were up that way.
Could have been worse.
I suppose, yeah. I suppose if you're climbing a rock and somebody shoots at you, it could be worse.
Could have been worse.
Yeah.
Do you think very many of the 10th at the foot soldier level realized how fluid it was, or what the tensions were?
I think they understood the basic tensions between Yugoslav Italians and the two, maybe not so much between the two groups of Italians, because that required a little sophistication to understanding the politics of the time. And so I would say most of us would have grasped that. But the other kind of tension between the Yugoslavs wanting to get in there and our people trying to have them move back, I think they understood that. That was fairly clear. It was clear in the orders that Hayes gave to the division. He spelled it out very clearly.
Now, at the time, because there were these different factions that were sort of ragtag,
Yeah.
was it difficult to always tell who the other side was?
Not that I recall, but then I'm not sure. Because you could tell they were partisans. I mean, they sort of, they'd wear some of them would wear German uniforms or parts of German uniforms, that kind of thing. So you could tell all these oddly dressed guys must have been partisans. The Yugos tend to be more uniform dressed as officials of their country, so to speak, or soldiers of their country, or partisans of their country. But the Italian, there was some wild forms of dressing about them, I think.
Could you tell from these wild forms of dressing?
Which is which? I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I couldn't.
You couldn't what?
I couldn't have told one from the other, really. I don't think. I didn't really see so many of it, but I think in some situations where there were real tension, when they're trying to get somebody to move out of town, the guys who were there caught on quite quickly who they're dealing with.
Did you have any sense that if there was going to be some interactions that it could lead to a bigger fight?
Oh yeah, I think we did.
You knew what?
That fighting was a possibility, sure. Oh sure, they.
Can you do me a favor and just rephrase that so it's all together?
I don't know if I can. Yeah, no, I think there was a real sense that fighting was possible. We understood that there were some areas we ought not go because it might precipitate fighting. We were really told to stay out of certain approaches towards the Yugoslav border because they didn't want us sort of walking along and all of a sudden bump into Yugoslavs and maybe start a fight. So they were careful about that. We didn't send patrols unnecessarily into unnecessary places.
So you're not looking for trouble at this point.
Well, not serious trouble, no.
At this point, you guys had been in battle for 4 months.
Yeah.
Was 4 months enough to be war weary?
2 minutes is enough to be war. No, I don't think. Well, it's hard to say. It is hard. We had a lot of replacements. I know G Company. We lost 111 men in 2 days fighting, and we got 112 replacements the next day. Now, some of those replacements are G guys who were coming back from being in the hospital after a stretch and that sort of thing. But quite a few were just green recruit, guys who were sent overseas to be replacements. Now, as it happened, G Company was had experienced one of the highest losses at the time. There was another E Company, and they, I think, had losses equivalent to ours. And of course, there were a lot who didn't have that kind of serious loss. But as a division, we were in pretty good shape.
Did you have a sense that some of these were sort of disproportionate losses? That's a lot of losses, what you just said.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about disproportionate. I mean, you get shot at and you lose guys. How do you know what's disproportionate?
Do you have
you're in serious trouble. I mean, you've been through some serious trouble. I mean, G Company was the company. John McGrath, who was the only congressional winner of the Congressional Medal of Honor, was a G Company guy. And
did you have a sense at the time that it was a disproportionate amount?
Well, I don't understand the context of disproportionate.
Or a higher amount than normal, or
we had no gauge.
How about in hindsight?
Well, we were pretty hard hit. I mean, we hit pretty hard and lost a lot of guys.
Where'd you lose them all?
Well, our largest single loss was the attack on Hill 909 on the first day of the first day and the second day of the spring offensive.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to wrap up Hugo
Sure.
with you first, though. Did you have a sense, you can either speak to this from personal or as a historian, that the 10th was making history at the Yugoslavian border?
Oh, I think it was making history. It was participating in a very important historic event. It saved that area for the Italians. I mean, that was a major gain of the then approaching Cold War.
Now, you're saying that in retrospect, or what were you thinking at the time?
Oh, I don't know. We didn't think any of that at the time. I mean, those are big thoughts. Big thoughts occur after it's all over.
Excellent. That's a really, really good observation on that. Can you talk a little bit about how the Yugoslavian area was actually a combination of forces from Britain and New Zealand? I'd like to spread the credit around a little bit.
Oh, sure. Well, let me ask you spell out the question a little bit more clearly if you can.
It wasn't just the 10th.
No, it wasn't
going in there.
No.
Can you just give me a little background on who else was there? The 10th was part of a combination of forces.
Yes.
I mean, you've read the Race to Trieste, obviously.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
How about if you summarize that in like 24 words?
Say what? Again? That whole book? No.
But it wasn't just the 10th going in
No.
to hold back Tito. It was a combination of forces, including...
It was essentially British and American forces combined. The British, the New Zealanders actually sort of got there first. Then the British moved, I don't know which ones there are, but they moved essentially a division. I don't think maybe a little more than a division altogether. And they tended to, worked the area that ran, say, from Trieste and a little bit up the Isonzo. And then we came in the heart of the province, along that highway 57, was it, something like that, and we were the American force at that time. Sorry, I should start over again. When the British and the New Zealanders took over the Trieste and that whole area, and there was another division from the 10th, which one I now forget, also moved in sort of on the left flank of the Brits and the New Zealanders and so on. And they were there for a while. Then we came, in a sense, not quite relieved them because we took over some territory that they hadn't got to, but that's what happened. And they were withdrawn, that first American division, whatever it was.
But they weren't 10th.
No, they weren't
Right.
10th. These were American. There was another American division. I forgot now which one. It's in my, but I don't.
But
I can't
could
remember.
you sort of succinctly state that it was a combination of forces?
Oh yes, there was no question about it, because Harry Truman was the guy who actually issued the orders. They get going, get some troops in there.
So rephrase this for me. It was a combination of forces.
It was a combination of forces, British and American, that came in and occupied that area and prevented the Yugoslavs from taking it over.
Would you say, and here I'm cueing you, would you say that it was decades before it was clear how the changing balance of power would shape the future?
If you think of the overall thing, no, I think the balance is sort of established rather quickly. I mean, that line down through Europe was settled, in a matter of weeks.
And how did that shape the future?
Well, it set the framework for the Cold War.
You just did it. That was really, really well done.
Oh.
You want to pause for 1 second?
Pausing.
Okay.
He was on Mars for the last 50 years.
My,
But I can't cover it.
So
with you.
he's going to throw me a heavy question, right?
No, it's genius. It's totally genius.
Oh, okay.
But look at Abby, though.
Oh, all right, I'll look at Abby. I'll pretend that you are asking the question. So ask
As
already.
I was saying,
Yes?
What my question is, why did we want to put these troops in there to protect the Italians? We had just fought the Italians. Why did we want to keep their land from getting seized?
First part of the question is, the Italians by then were fighting on our side. They declared when after we invaded Sicily, the Italians surrendered to us and then joined us as allies. So the Italians were allies, actually, technically.
So did you fight alongside any Italians?
No.
Would you,
Well, where were they?
At home. No, I don't.
would you have trusted one to fight alongside an Italian?
Yeah, I guess. There was an Italian regiment that fought with the British Fifth Army, if my memory is right. But the Italians didn't do well, except there were a lot of partisans who were very helpful and very good, who helped, particularly north of Rome into the Po Valley. There was a lot of partisan activity. So, and Italy was an ally, and we didn't want the Yugoslavs in there for whatever reason.
Well, how does an army go from being your enemy to an ally overnight? How does that happen?
They surrendered. The Italians, yeah, it is a good question. Why they did, I'm not exact, but they did. But before we invaded Italy, we invaded Sicily. But before we invaded Italy, Italy surrendered to us, and then later became an ally. I think that's. You can look it up in my book, War North of Rome.
If you need to know more.
I have a first chapter that sort of lays down some background.
Now think about this. What else are we going to say later about this whole Yugoslavian thing that we will say, God, I wish I'd asked X, Y, Z? What will that be?
It's hard for me to think of that. I mean, there are little bits of things here and there that I think I could recall with some effort, but they're not part of well, all added together, they make up the big picture. But I think we've covered the big picture, particularly as far as it exists as a 10th, and its participation in the occupation of that area on behalf of Italy and the Allies.
Okay. I'm going to move on to more personal experiences. If at any point you want to switch off your historian point of view, please do, or put on your helmet as a private first class. You're the first person I've actually talked to who was in the same company as Johnny McGrath. Do me a favor and recount in your own words anything you can remember about Johnny. What was he like?
John.
Tell me the story of his ending. Tell me anything you know about the actions that led up to his ending.
Oh, sure. John was I was a company runner from my second platoon attached to the company. So I was with the company. And John was, I think, at one point the company radio man. I never saw him run a radio, but it was allegedly he was a company radio man. And the day the spring offense opened up, John was named the squad leader of essentially the company squad of platoon runners and the odd and end character, a squad of about 12 men altogether, and John was named essentially the squad leader, a position that called for being at least a buck sergeant. He was still a PFC, but we all knew and felt that he would become a buck sergeant before the day was over, and he got us. We came down off Dulles Bay, and we Dulles Bay is kind of, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a wooded slope, and then there's this open business. There's a fish pond down there now, but there used to be an open valley. And so John, we all got down there, and we were all very reluctant to do anything, and John just got us moving, and got us across and up to where the company had dug in its command post. And we saw this, and then John, at that point, John, when the second platoon had been stopped by the Germans. I mean, they weren't able to move. And John went over to find out what was going on. I don't really know whether he was sent or whether he acted on his own, but I think he may have been. But he went over, and when he got there, he saw that they were being held up by some German machine gun nest, and he stepped into one of them, killed a German, picked up, and his rifle jammed. So he picked up a German a German machine gun, and went after 2 or 3 other machine gun nests. He knocked out about four or five of them, and then that freed up the second platoon to move forward and attack the rest, take the rest of the hill. Then John came back to the company headquarters So all this time, I'd been sent back to the foot of the mountain to bring up the not brigade, oh, come on.
Regiment?
No, smaller unit.
Company?
No, the one in between regiment company.
Battalion?
Battalion commander. I wouldn't gone down to bring the battalion commander, lead him up to our command post. And I went down just about the time John went over to do his thing with it. I didn't know about this. But when I came back with Colonel, I heard John had been killed because he'd gone out to get situation reports from each of the platoons. And he'd done his job, and he was coming back over an open field, and a shell came in and killed him. So I knew that much, but I didn't know about this other stuff. Matter of fact, didn't know about it until the war was over, when Fred Aloisi and I were writing up citations. For the bunch of citations had been the company commander wanted to give out, but they had to be written up. So Fred and I were, Fred was doing it, but I was sort of helping him out. And so we did one for John, applying for somewhere, the Silver Star actually, or the one above it. There's one between that, I forget. And so it was sent in, and the division sent it back and said, write him up for a Medal of Honor. So Fred sat down, and Fred was in the 2nd platoon, so he knew about all that stuff. And we both knew McGrath, because McGrath had been with us from Camp Hale. He was a very quiet guy, and he used to, well, the rest of us used to go on weekend passes and fool around a little bit. He always went. He'd go to town and he'd go to church. He was basically a religious man, and no, he wasn't a drinker or a fool around or whatever. He was just a solid, simple guy, and that's why he got the Congressional Medal of Honor, I'd say.
Do you think that his particular act of greatness at that point, I know there were many acts of greatness by many people that was not acknowledged, but was it almost reflexive for him?
Yeah, I guess so. He'd see a job that needs doing, and he'd do it. Yeah, Ed Nicholson, who was there, said that John, sort of afterwards, John looked at Nick and said, "I'm having a hell of a lot of fun." Maybe I'll not use that, but anyway.
Well, if he'd survived to say more, I would have been even happier.
Yeah.
But did you have a sense that he was the kind of guy that would not even think twice about putting himself in danger?
Oh, sure.
Can you
Well,
say
that's
that?
why we followed him. I mean, we wouldn't have gone out in that valley if it'd been some other guy, maybe. We'd turn around and gone home. I don't think we've done that, but nonetheless. No, he was a natural born leader of, and we followed him. Because he was that kind of guy. It's interesting because he was a very soft-spoken, quiet guy. And he never shouted at anybody or anything. He just said, "Okay, let's go." And that's what we did.
Did you even think twice about danger when you're following Johnny?
I thought danger every minute of the moment, every minute.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Was it a little unnerving when you heard he'd been killed?
Well, no, a lot of other guys have been killed. No, it wasn't. That sense didn't stand out. It was just another. We lost. By then, we lost some 64 of our guys.
At the time, when people kind of fall out so regularly, did you have any sense that he'd done anything more remarkable than other people?
No, because I didn't know about the machine gun business. Going, volunteering and going around a club. That was something that everybody would have done. And he was in the position to tell one of us to do it because he was a squad leader. Because he if the company commander said, "Hey, look, go out and have somebody go out," which company probably did, go out and have somebody pick up situation reports. He had every right to say, "Okay, send whoever was in the squad out to do that," and he did. He volunteered to go himself, and he volunteered to go himself because he knew it was dangerous. Yeah, no, he knew it was really. It was the kind of thing he'd do. He would not put another guy in danger when he didn't have to. This is what it amounted to. He was that kind of guy.
Well, that's really nice. Tell me a little bit more about 909 in terms of what happened to you on 909.
Oh no.
What do you remember?
Oh.
And tell me what happened first. Because I had never heard of what your own particular.
Well, that was the beginning of the offensive, and it was kind of odd because I'd been in the hospital with a blood poisoning this arm, and it cleared up the penicillin. So I got back to the company. It was supposed to be the day before the attack, but they kept postponing it. And one of the I thought I went back to a battalion on something or other, and Bill Mahoney was there, and Bill came out and said, President Roosevelt died. So I said, oh. And I thought that was why they postponed the attack. But it turned out the reason they kept postponing the attack was bad weather conditions for the Air Corps guys back in Barrie somewhere, wherever they were, but they kept postponing it. And you'd sit there, you wake up in the morning about 9 o'clock and you hear things going overhead, and it'd sound like freight cars. I mean, literally, you'd hear this big thing going over. It sounded like a bloody freight car going over your head, hitting the Germans. You say, my God, what's going to be left of those guys when do we go? But that happened for about 2 mornings. Then we finally, attacked. And as I said, I went with John across and we went out. The 2 lead platoons attacked first, and then the 3rd platoon, I think, was reserve. In essence, our little group moved out. If that makes a triangle, we were sort of in the middle of that triangle. Our little group went across the way, and there's a little cluster of houses. We ran there, and then we ran over to the foot of the mountain and up to the top. And then I sat there for a while, and foxhole dug, and there was a hillside. It was kind of cute. There was a hillside over here, and the hillside the farmer had just plowed it, and and little sprouts of green were coming up. It was absolutely wasn't even touched. And I'm watching this. All of a sudden, I'd see a plop, another plop. And another plop. What was happening? I guess there were mortar rounds. I think the Germans were dropping round after round at this empty hillside. I almost started laughing because there were no troops there. They were throwing all this stuff on this hillside, plop, plop, plop. Oh Lord! And then they sent me down to see Colonel Stone, and I came down the mountain. Colonel Stone was there, and Colonel Stone said, "Son," he says, your company was the first to take its objective today." And I looked at the colonel. I said, "Oh." And I said, "Oh," says I to myself. "Oh." I sort of, and then I had to lead him up to the company command post, which is about just this side of the top of the hill. And there was a gully going up. So here I got this colonel and his aide. I'm in charge of this big monkey buck. So I said to him, "Follow me, sir," or something. So I started up, and at first I started up the gully. I said, "Well, down in the gully, we're not going to get shot." Then I walk up the gully, and I say to myself, "Oh God, this is the place where Germans are going to put mines." So I climb out of the gully, and I start walking on the side of the gully, and I walk a little bit, and then there's all this stuff. So I went back in the gully again. The colonel must have thought I was crazy because I went in and out of the gully about 6 times. Then I got him up there, put him, and he went over to talk to the company commander. And by then, I think, as I said, we lost some 60 of our guys. It means dead and wounded, not they weren't all killed. And so he got orders, Stone got orders then that we would attack for a hill ahead of us. And Stone refused. He said, "No, they've been too badly hit." And I didn't hear this, but Sergeant Brockman, who was a friend of mine, told me this later. He said, there was a hell of an argument over the phone between Colonel Stone and whatever. And he was relieved on the spot. And he was a West Pointer, by the way, which is interesting. The West Pointers had sort of a world of their own within the Army, And this guy, Colonel Stone, was a West Pointer. They relieved him on the spot, and they replaced him with another colonel. And he, son of a bitch, he said, "Go ahead." So the next morning we go forward, and we come down off the hill there, and on the way, the radio guy gets hit. So I went over and picked up the radio and went down. We carried the radio into this. So I see Fred Eloise saying, "Follow me." So I said, "Oh yeah, Fred, I'll follow you." And Fred, the idiot, keeps on going to the next hill. And I said, "I'm not going that far." So I went in the building, and so we had to set up a company headquarters. And so I tried to get a hold of use the radio and stop on the radio. Hey, fellas, we were being shelled actually by our own troops. Saying, hey, lift the fire. They wouldn't pay me any mind. So I'm sitting there. The next thing you know, I start swearing. I called the colonel name, the regimental commander names, every name I could think of. General Hayes, I called him. I swore up and down. Brockman said, who overheard Brock said, he said, I never heard such swearing in all my life. And they finally recognized me. And the reason they recognized me is because somebody said, listen, no German soldier is going to cuss his office. So they finally answered me. I said, hey, fellas, because I was told to tell them that over the radio. So that was sort of it. Then we withdrew because we didn't have the strength to keep on going that way. And they didn't really need us because by then the 87th had been moving off on the right and heading north. And then we picked up 112 replacements a couple of days later. Mount Pigna, Pigna, P-I-G-N-A.
Right.
And I carried the radio the rest of the way.
Can you pause for a second? Now,
the radio, which I always think is very funny because of the swearing and calling down on the officers. And finally they realized that it was one of theirs.
he's on our side.
Yeah.
What else will you later say? God, I wish I'd said X, Y, Z.
Oh, no. Tell you how funny it was crossing the Po River.
Oh, please.
Well, first of all, I didn't know this at the time, but we got the boats that really were supposed to go to the 85th Division. The engineer
What is
said,
creative commandeering?
oh, it was, some engineer was sent back to get our boats, which are way, way back, I'm told. This I only know because I read it, And then he saw this bunch of guys coming with boats, and he said, follow me, and he took them to us. And we went over these bloody little boats. There were 4 guys to a side paddling, and I'm sitting in the middle with a radio on the back, see. And the radio weighed about 40 pounds. So all the way across, I'm saying, can I swim with this goddamn thing on my back? And I said, no. Then I'm going to throw it overboard. No. Then I had this internal conversation all the way across the river. And I'd say, suppose some bitches shoot at us. I'm going to throw the radio in the water and run, swim for it. Then we went across. There was nothing, I guess the 87th had somebody shoot at him and stuff like that. The only other thing I remember that crossing, before we crossed, we saw the last Messerschmitt in all of Italy. All the time we'd never seen a German plane, at all. The 10th never saw a German. But we got to Po Valley, and we set up a perimeter around both sides of the river, so to speak. And all of a sudden, this Messerschmitt, the German plane, came flying over. And you got the feeling the guy was hesitating. I don't know how you feel. The plane is hesitating. But this guy flew over us. And all of a sudden, on 4 sides, up goes a barrage of anti-aircraft guns going up. And again, you could, in your mind, you saw this pilot say, hey, having second thoughts about whatever he's going to do. And he turned around and he went zipping north about as fast as he could go. Never saw him again.
How did the 10th shape your life?
Oh, I don't know. Sent me to college.
Did it shape you internally? Do you think
I don't know,
being in the 10th kind of shaped who you were in terms of your values and character?
I must have. I just don't know. I mean, what's the difference? Well, I'll tell you one difference. We weren't there long enough to get killed, so so that was one thing. And the 10th, the 10th was sort of divided. There were sort of a bunch of guys who were just, organized. Then there were all these eggheads and college graduates and all that kind of thing. It was a rather weird division altogether.
How so?
Well, because this combination it had between. Well, actually, the combination got worse. At Hale, a large number of them in Hale were 3-letter men. They all got 3 letters, and I didn't have 3 letters, but I got there. And but we went to Swift. We got John. By the way, John is a Swift, but he was a 3-letter man, really. Well, we had an influx of a whole bunch of guys, and they added a weapons platoon, which we didn't have before. And now some of the weapons platoon guys were drawn from our various lot, but a lot of them are, fresh guys, So there was there were those 3 elements, the college kids skiers, And then there was another group that was somewhat like them, but quasi-volunteers and so on. Then you had the rest who were sort of regular, Army guys. Tony Ragazzini told me, Tony was training for something in I think Pennsylvania. He said one morning they were called out, and they were lined up as usual, and the company commander said, "Okay, all you non-coms out." And he said, looked at the rest of them, he said, "You guys, you've all volunteered for the ski troops." So Tony had never seen it. Well, he did. He came from Akron, Ohio, but he certainly hadn't done any skiing, and he wound up there. And then Jack Goodman came out. He wound up on the Pando at the railroad station, wearing summer khakis from maneuvers in Louisiana. And Jack had never seen a ski in his life, never mind snow. He called it torture board. He had this great Southern accent, and he was a hoot. So we had that kind of thing, and then and all these weird things. We had a lieutenant. Oh hell, his name just went out of my mind. What was his name? He jumped at Iron Mountain, and he actually outjumped in a contest in Aspen. He outjumped Torger Tokel once. Yeah, he really did. He was terrific.
His name Ole? I mean, what would it have been if he's from Iron Mountain?
Well, he used to ski and jump there too, but he never established that kind of record. But they had the 10th guys arranged some sort of jumping thing in Aspen one time, and he outjumped. It said Torger. Oh, his name just was at the edge of my tongue. Something Zazinski. But anyway, he was a platoon leader for a while in G Company. Zabrinsky, that's right, Zabrinsky. So his way of teaching guys, we had some of the guys like Tony and Jack Goodman, and so we went up to some hillside out near the camp, and we get up there and we climb all the way up top, and Zabrinsky looks at it and he says, "Okay, guys, follow me down." And he says, "Those who get down without falling, they go do whatever they want for the rest of the day. But the rest of you are going to go back up again." And he did this all day long. At the end of the day, he had everybody had come down that slope without falling. I mean, and some of those guys had never been on skis before in their life. Wow. I mean, he was some character. Then they made him a company commander, see? So we're up in some, I don't know if it was regimental or battalion exercise, and we're going to go back to camp. And everybody's lined up, most of them ahead of us, company after company. Guys, the Army business, stop and go. And here all these guys go, they're stopping. And so Zavinsky takes a look at all this and he says, "Fellas, follow me." And he gets up out of the road, on the side of the road, and he goes off. And the whole G Company goes zipping by the whole battalion. We go back into camp, we've showered, had supper, and we're on to the movies or wherever, PX, and the rest of the outfit comes, trudging. Well, you know how long he lasted as company commander? About a week. They sent him to another company, and I don't know if it's within the same regiment or not. He became a platoon leader again.
He sounded like he was efficient.
He was some guy.
No wonder it didn't work out.
No.
How do you think, how much of a difference did the 10th make in Italy?
Well, you know what the 10th was like in a way? It was like the kid on his father's shoulder. The kid can see farther than his father because he's sitting on his father's shoulder, right? The 10th, in a sense, was sitting on the shoulder of a lot of other outfits that had done one hell of a job. And we happened to hit a rather crucial spot and did well with it. Got, out there and so on, and started moving things. So in that sense, we had made we obviously made a contribution. Removing Belvedere enabled the First Armored down the valley move forward. and in turn, that really sort of loosened up the South Africans who were further over between us and two Corps. And when Truscott was up, he sort of had a falling shoulder on his left flank. And what he wanted to do was to bring it up even with 2 Corps. Fourth Corps, he wanted to bring that part of, he didn't have to bring all of Fourth Corps up because there were all these stupid mountains that nobody wanted to fight over, So we, the First Armored, See, everybody forgets it was the First Armored, and we were ordered to move. We would clear Belvedere so the First Armored could move forward, and the Brazilians sort of, sifted here and there to move forward, and then Truscott stopped because Hayes got us moving pretty fast. He got us pretty moving because. We managed to knock the Germans off Belvedere and sort of opened up some space, and he was moving. And so Truscott stopped him because he didn't want, you probably all know this, but he didn't want to alert the Germans to the situation there. He didn't want them to bring any reserves over and so on. And then, so he stopped us along the Dulles Bay line, which was short of our original goal. We were supposed to go another ridge or two, as it were. And then, when we came to the spring offensive, it was interesting because Truscott didn't expect us to break through. I had a feeling he thought possible that the First Armored would be more natural to break down the Reno River and therefore flank Bologna on the left. Because the First Armored faced really roughly the strength of the Germans we faced. Would not have been unusual. And what was significant, he placed his reserve, his only division. He had one division of reserve. The 2 Corps was strung out on its set to go, and he took his reserve and put it behind the First Armored. The 85th Division were placed behind the First Armored before the attack began, and then. Much to everybody's surprise, we broke through what we did up in the ridge, up in the mountains to the left of the First Armored, and so what Truscott did, he moved fast. He, as we went forward, he took the First Armored instead of moving towards Milan. There was a hell of a mix-up. Going behind the tent, the trucks were going, tanks were going this way, and as we went down that whatever river valley that was, and then the 85th was thrown in to replace the First Armored, and they attacked alongside of us. They were like this, us all the way across the Po. And then the South Africans went out. And then, of course, when we got abreast, the whole idea is when we got abreast of 2 Corps, 2 Corps was to jump off. And then 2 Corps did. And of course, they had roughly the same kind of thing, 2 days of tough fighting out in the Po Valley. Met the Brits who were coming up Highway 9. Most everybody who hit the Po at that time really, the Germans just sort of disintegrated. They were surrendering all over the place. But the South Africans had one hell of a firefight in the middle of the Po Valley, in their part of the Po Valley when they got there, before they got to the river, Po River. And then we just sort of, we moved rapidly to the edge of the Po River, and then, General Hayes did his business with the boats, he got us across. And the other thing that's interesting, people forget this, Hayes wanted to get to Verona because he said Duff, was it Duff? I think had the combat patrol then, and Duff went up like this, and he started to go to Verona. By the time he got to Verona, the 85th was already there, the 85th Division. And that's funny because there are books after books showing a picture of GIs in Verona, and it says the 85th Regiment. It was the 85th Division. And so when Duff saw that they had taken Verona, he said, "I'm going to go over to Lake Garda," and I guess whether, those guys must know what they're doing. I assume generals know what they're doing. Some generals know what they're doing. And I think they just thought that by going away to Garda, they would have a way of plunging up, getting onto the Adige, and then heading right up into the Alps as far as they could go. So that's what they did. That's how it worked out anyway. They planned it.
Would you say?
Take change.
Oh, sorry.